Hi there. This week's episode on building the Modern Employer Brand podcast will be a little bit different than what you and I are used to. I'm actually going to respond to a couple of questions about my book writing journey and revealing, my backstory as an aspiring author, and also share with you what this book is all about. So I got inspired about writing a book a long time ago. If you've been following me for a longer time, you know how much I love writing. I actually think in writing. So every time I have to explain something more complex, what I first do is that I literally write down my thoughts on a piece of paper before I speak them out. It's more like, I need to sort of sort and organize my thoughts in writing. And that's, to me, it's literally that I think with writing. So writing is something that I've always been drawn to. I've always been good at writing. And I guess that's the reason why I made it my business and my life's work too. So I wanted to write a book for a long, long time. And I had so many book ideas for a long, long time. But I actually found out that when I work as an entrepreneur who creates a lot of content in writing and has to think a lot, with my sort of creative brain, that I never really seemed to find the time to actually sit down and write that book. About 16 years ago, when I was pretty close to starting my maternity leave with our before our child was born, I was approached by a big publisher in Finland, who was asking me if I would write a book that was on HR, like modern HR, because I was known as the modernizer of HR in Finland, and I said that I'll think about it during my maternity leave, because here in Finland, the maternity leave is usually like 1 year. So, if your baby sleeps well, then you have plenty of time to write a book or do whatever you want. But I actually ended up using my maternity leave aside of taking care of the new baby, planning and starting my first business. So I didn't write a book then. So I think that one of the reasons why I ended up writing my first book, because this is definitely only the first one, stems from my deep-rooted passion for helping businesses to build this magnetic, irresistible employer brand over the years that I've been working as an entrepreneur. And to me, I've always wanted to work from the employer branding angle in very close connection to what the business needs. So to me, it's never been an HR project, but more of a branding project for the organization and for that supports the business with the business needs. And I was always interested in figuring out how to use employer branding as a format that convinces and converts and retains ideal talents for the business. For the nearly first 10 years of my career, I worked as an in-house HR, and I was responsible for talent attraction and retention in international, fast-growing organizations. And that, I think, that gave me this really excellent perspective on the importance of employer branding inside out. And because I was working in HR, because I was part of that group of people that really felt the pain of talent acquisition and talent attraction and talent retention, I understood that the response to proper employer branding is not a fancy campaign created by an advertising agency, but something that needs to be built on the actual roots of the organizational culture and especially the leadership culture, the real values and the employee experiences in the organization. Because I was, for many years, I was really spending a lot of time also like developing and maintaining a really attractive workplace culture. So then for the other half of my career, which is more known to you, so for over 10 years now, I have focused on marketing and communications side of HR. My first business was a tech startup, and I used to hang out a lot with other tech entrepreneurs during those years. And that is why also for the first years of employer branding agency Eminence existence, we worked almost exclusively only with fast scaling tech companies. I had so many contacts, obviously, in the tech industry in Finland. And during those years of being a startup founder myself, and also a consultant for the other startup founders in my other business, this Eminence side, I was regularly solving talent-related challenges connected to either acquisition or retention. A lot of my peer tech entrepreneurs and founders were regularly calling me with their problems and challenges in talent acquisition and retention in their startups. And I really, through those experiences, I really learned the key pains, especially in growth organizations that are innovating, that are developing, that are changing a lot, that are transitioning in their sort of the business journey from this startup to, bigger and bigger organizations, getting investors, and expanding internationally. And I think that through my own experiences and those of other founders, I witnessed the transformative power of a strong employer brand in strengthening and shaping and stimulating the organizational culture. And I learned a thing or two about how to engage employees to advocate for the organization through their experiences as an HR, myself, how to use content and communication targeted at talents inside and outside the organization that support the constant organizational and business changes and drives the business success, because that was what was so much on the agenda of the obviously the tech entrepreneurs and founders and leaders. And I witnessed how much value those founders, entrepreneurs, and CEOs gave to someone who saw employer branding as the strategic tool to help deliver business goals and objectives. And I wanted to help people also who were working in HR at the time, because employer branding domain did not exist at the time at all. In Finland, I was literally the first person to start kind of scaling this employer branding community and domain up in Finland. So there were no employer branding people really. And for me, it was important to help those people in those tech startups to learn the skills and understand how to empower their CEOs and the top management with a business-driven employer branding initiatives and, getting to that position that I've had the pleasure of holding as the trusted advisor to founders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and, the top executives when it comes to retaining and acquiring new talent. And I personally, felt it so empowering and fulfilling to me professionally, being trusted as this person, being the go-to person for entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs, top executives when it comes to this. And I wanted to help our agencies, the client people also, as well as my coaching students, to learn those skills and get the tools and kind of that self-confidence, the right kind of attitude and the knowledge that they need so that they can win the trust of those vital stakeholders, gain that respect that you guys need and deserve. And writing this book and sharing this amazingly effective method that I've designed and developed over the years since 2015 has been my legacy. It is my life's work for the global employer branding domain. And that is what this book will be about, the magnetic employer branding method. As said, the book is about this magnetic employer branding method. And obviously, I'm going to introduce you to this systematic marketing approach for building your magnetic employer branding. In this method, in this framework, there are 5 key principles that I will go through in the book. Who is this for? When is this a really suitable and empowering and effective method for an organization? What problems does this method solve? Also going to talk about the why. If you've been following me for long enough, you probably read or heard me talk about why traditional employer branding failed. I've talked about it a lot. That is why in the early days, I started to call my way of building an employer brand the modern way of building an employer brand. So I talk about the traditional versus the modern, which is based on a lot of what has happened in the operating environment in the world, with all the global changes over the past 15 years. I'll talk about what is a campaign and what is branding, because those are 2 very different things. And obviously talk about also the potential that is lost if you're not actually employer branding. And I talk about the benefits of employer branding as well in this book. I go into the what on my mind map. And in this, I introduce the communications framework. This is called the talent or the candidate journey of the information era that I also in the internal employer branding side, you just replace the candidate word with the employee word. I talk about the 4 important phases of this candidate or employee journey, and that are obviously winning the sustainable attention, building employer brand awareness, employer brand affinity, and those value conversions that I actually talked about all these phases in the previous 2 episodes on this podcast, in which I compared employer branding to dating. So really good stuff. And actually some of that stuff will be in the book also. Also talk about in more detail the 5 key principles of the magnetic employer branding method. The first one is the talent is always the hero. That was my discovery a long time ago. I started to study storytelling that was around 2015 as well. And getting into that storytelling world really inspired me to building this method. So that was what I first learned in storytelling, that who's the hero of the story. And at the time I studied a lot. I purchased quite expensive courses provided by Donald Miller at the time, who's written this amazing book on storytelling, The Story Brand. And he talks about the customer is the hero. So I learned from him why customer is the hero, and applied that same idea in the magnetic employer branding method, where talent is the hero. The second principle is that the employer positions themselves as the trusted work-to-life mentor and the guide that provides a plan for better life. That's very much about the magnetic employer branding method. The third key principle is that employer branding is not a campaign, but it's actually an ongoing communications process of something that in this method, we call the key story themes that are going to be unique and very tailored to each organization applying this method. And then the fourth key principle is that employer branding communication, this ongoing communications process, keeps inviting those relevant talents on this journey with your organization. If you have, over the past year, have purchased the magnetic employer branding strategy process from my agency, you are familiar with the content pillars. That is a new addition to this method. And this key principle 4 refers to content pillar 1 in this method. And the fifth principle is that the systematic communications process is there to actually move those target audiences on their individual candidate journeys with your organization towards those expected strategic conversion points, the value conversions that are detailed in your magnetic employer branding strategy that I talked about in detail in last week's episode 181. The whole point of this method is to make sure that your organization investing in employer branding is actually receiving lots of employer brand value that is specifically designed and chosen and decided to match what your business needs from talent retention and talent acquisition, or one or the other. So there is no point doing employer branding unless that turns into investment, converting value back to the organization. If you're just doing employer brand marketing without any of those specific business-worthy value conversions, employer branding is just a cost. It's not an investment. It's just an extra cost for the business. And we all know that your boss is unlikely to want to add more costs. So it has to be an investment. And this is what this method provides you with. Then we continue, or I continue in this book. So how do you do this? So I go into the systematic communications process, which is business storytelling to match talent minds with your company mission. Talk about the means, the skills, the content marketing process, also about the strategy, which is based on your strategic company culture and employee experiences. Talk about the pillars, the key themes, the marketing goals, and the KPIs for employer branding with this, according to this method. And then I talk about the outcomes, which I call always what success looks like. So the return on investment, which can be anything from cost savings to customer value to attraction to retention to transformation to stakeholder management to competitive advantage for the entire business because you have such an attractive employer brand, and also to competitive market position as an employer. So this is what this method is about, and what I go through in this book. Now, as said, I've always been deeply interested in business operations. I think I was always the unconventional HR person because I was so interested in what the business needs from HR and how can I use my knowledge, my skills, my understanding of people behavior, my understanding of what an employee or a job seeker is looking for. How can I use all that knowledge to help the business with very specific needs, goals, KPIs? I always worked as an internal HR. I always worked very closely to the CEO or the operations manager who was responsible for the business results because I wanted to have this one-on-one connection and sort of the open door policy for understanding what are their visions, what are their pain points, what are their struggles with the business when it comes to employees and job seekers and talent acquisition and leadership. And that was always very important to me. And that is always how I've seen my role as an HR manager. So the way I'm building and supporting others to build employer brands is obviously based on that kind of angle of HR. This always made sense to me to use this knowledge as an in my in-house role or an external consultant to position myself as this advisor to the CEO, the top management, so that they have somebody in HR who's able to use the business information to strengthen the organization's abilities to execute customer promises and deliver those business goals. So for me, everything that I've ever done in HR or now as a consultant working with lots of HR people is stemming from what the business needs from the people, from the employees, and how can I use my skills and knowledge to get those people to deliver it, but always with this win-to-win approach. And that has been my personal for successful business, that it's not just the employer taking everything from the employees, but employees are getting something very valuable in return. That's part of the whole method and the sort of the ideology behind the magnetic employer branding method, that how can we as employers support our employees to build a better life as a result of being part of our organization. However, over the past decade or more, I also have noticed this gap in knowledge and resources available for businesses and professionals seeking like practical guidance and how-tos and actionable strategies in talent marketing. So not just employer branding, but also for recruitment marketing. Employer branding has unfortunately been mistaken for recruitment campaigns all this time. I've done my fair share of educational work through my content, through my keynotes as an employer, training and coaching my employees, the past ones and the current ones, as a coach, as a keynote speaker, as a podcaster, and to help understand the difference between employer branding and recruitment campaigns. And recruitment campaigns and recruitment marketing is incredibly important, but the actual potential and the whole purpose of building an employer brand is or will be lost in translation if you see it only as a recruitment campaign. So if you really want to get the actual value out of building an employer brand, you need to see it as a different type of activity than what the recruitment campaign is. During my time as a podcaster and researching for this book and learning, especially as a podcaster for my international audience, I've actually learned that we are most advanced in employer branding thinking here in the Nordic countries. Canada is apparently becoming more and more mature in their employer branding thinking, and I've been excited to see that some of the Eastern European countries are also advancing in this domain. But most of the world, and especially apparently USA, still see employer branding a lot only as recruitment campaigns. So I think that we still have so much potential to get from employer, to win from employer branding. And I'm hoping that this book will be a really good guide for you guys working in employer branding to actually get the value from employer branding and kind of transition from recruitment campaigns into actual branding. When I first launched the first version of the magnetic employer branding method, it wasn't even called magnetic employer branding method yet at the time. This was in 2015. I had already developed a very strong employer branding angle to talent acquisition in Finland. I had a very similar systematic approach to recruitment marketing that accelerated the employer brand awareness, like recruitment process by recruitment process. And this system I launched already back in 2011 with that tech startup that I was developing or growing. And with that system, I launched the magnetic job post and this content and social media based recruitment marketing strategy, which today I provide in the Instant Employer Brand Accelerator program that I have available. So I've tested this magnetic employer branding method and all the sort of the core knowledge that I've built in it for, since 2011, I've developed it. I tested it with like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of recruitment cases first and then employer branding cases. And these proprietary copy and content formulas that I've designed and developed into this method, for such a long time. So I can guarantee a super strong impact on your target audiences when you use this magnetic employer branding method or that instant employer brand accelerator in connection to recruitment campaigns. Our clients have won awards and accolades as employers of choice as the result of following these methods. And I think that there's enough proof of concept to write this book and share this knowledge with you guys as well. And, there aren't really systematic approaches or formulas for employer branding and employer brand marketing in this world. And this realization obviously sparked my desire to fill this void with an employer branding system that is proven and has been tested for a long time in real cases, to provide such a comprehensive resource for people that are ambitious enough in employer branding to actually want to support the business internally and externally with employer branding and thrive in this ever evolving world of talent acquisition and retention and employer branding. So I'm incredibly passionate about sharing the magnetic employer branding method with the wider audience. And I want to mention that this unique method has been recognized as a game changer in the employer branding domain. It's based on business storytelling to match talent minds with company missions. So I'm bringing in the company culture side, employee experiences, purpose-driven side of branding and leading an organization, building a business. And on also the method is based on science, the science of story and the science of persuasion and the science of human behavior. So this method is backed by science. So it is backed by hundreds of years and with story, the science of story, with thousands of years of evidence, how the science works. By writing this book, I aim to demystify these complexities that go on with employer branding and empower professionals at all levels to harness the full potential of their organization's brand potential to attract and retain talents that their business's success requires. And ultimately, I think that what drove me to embark on this writing journey is the belief that every organization, regardless of the size or the industry, deserves to have access to knowledge and tools that are needed to build a magnetic employer brand that sets them apart as an employer of choice. So I'm incredibly excited to share my insights, my really long experience, and this proven strategy with my readers, with my audience, with you guys. And I hope that this book will serve as a guiding light, that Northern Star for you or for anyone who's seeking to elevate their employer branding efforts to new heights. I'm going to leave you and love you with this kind of an authentic look into my journey as writing a book on employer branding. As said, and about the launch time, because that has been asked about. So when is this book available and in which format? So this book will be published this coming autumn. This is 2024. And we plan to publish it obviously on paper, in digital format and audio format. So to serve all those all those content taste buds of yours. And because I am actually getting close to my deadline of transferring this draft to an editor, I'm going to need to put this podcast on a little hiatus for a little while, which means that there will be an episode next week and maybe the week after, because I want to invite Nora, my colleague, my employee, who just won the award, the Magnet Award, for the best employer branding professional in Finland on the agency side, because I want you to hear her story, how she found employer branding, how she found me and us, and what has been her professional journey from someone who, found employer branding to becoming awarded as the best employer branding professional in Finland. So that's exciting. I'm looking forward to sharing that episode with you next week. And then I'm also hoping to get Maiju on this podcast. Maiju is our client who Nora and I work with on a daily basis. Weekly basis, almost on a daily basis. and they just won the Creating an Employer Brand Award, which is a strategy award. And their employer branding is based on this magnetic employer branding method. So I thought that Maiju and Nora and I could also share with you her experiences as our client and obviously on this method. But that's all for this week, my dear friend. I'm so excited if you are looking forward to this book and if you'll be in my book audience this autumn. And yeah, I'm going to wish you a happy week and talk to you next week. But, just so that you know, I'm going to go on a bit of a podcast hiatus in a couple of weeks so that I can actually get this book done. Alrighty. Bye-bye. Moi moi.